So I don't want to go into that debate now of these religions. I have told you that we are confusing religion with faith. And this is a very big mistake. We think that Anglicanism is the same thing as when you come up and you say, no, I believe like our senior brother Joshua Maponga Marara the third, when he talks about faith, he talks about us believing in our mediums that we use to communicate to our God. They say you are a traditionalist, you are a kafiri, you are, we Africans,
you are which doctor?
Africans, we are the only people who do not have our own religion. The English and their associates have got Anglicanism. The Germans and their associates have got Presbyterian. The Roman Catholics, hear them. The very bored Roman Catholic. You will get an Andrew Irumba here. He says he is a Roman Catholic. You are here a Roman. Of where? When did you become a Roman? That I am a Roman.
You are roasting him. Look at them.
That is a Roman Catholic. Where? So therefore, there is no way.
What about Daniel?
The Muslims. Yes, you get a Daniel here who says, you see, I'm with Daniel. Therefore, I'm Anglican. I'm already is going to Anglican. But you say at the end of the day, all that is...
Welcome to the Pan-African Pyramid Weekly Roundup with the speaker Andrew Irumba Katusabe. I am joined by my comrade, my usual suspect, Daniel Garama Karuchiko. Daniel Garama Karuchiko, welcome.
Thank you very much, Comrade Irumba.
Our other usual suspect, Comrade Thomas Elisafre Rutatina, is not with us this morning. The gentleman has traveled outside Africa, but we hope to see him next. He will actually miss 2 Mondays. We shall see him on the third Monday, I think. Comrade Elisafre, wherever you are, we wish you the best, and we know that you're going to gather some more information for us when we come back here. Fire.
We shall be waiting for
him. Mr. Karuchiko, this morning I want us to, among other issues, we want to discuss the Burkina Faso-France tensions. We know what is happening there between Burkina Faso and France. We also needed to look at the Tshisekedi Kagame meeting in the US, and then finally we could end up with Mohozi is self-appointing as the commander-in-chief, CDF, in the East African region. He has recently told of Joseph Kabila, a son of a former president, but also himself as a former president, Joseph Kabila. He told him, even if you have returned back to Congo, I will never allow you to be president of Congo again. I am supporting Tshisekedi, my brother. Imagine a CDF of Uganda and a UPDF is in Congo. So we will have a look at that. But before we go to the main topics, normally I want to hear your 1 or 2 cents about what could have made the sense in the week for you around the world in a Pan-African context.
Well, thank you so much, Comrade Irumba, the speaker. And a very good morning to our esteemed viewers and also fellow thinkers, like I usually say, because everybody thinks.
Yeah.
You know, it is.
Everybody thinks.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends. The quality of thinking may differ, and certainly it does, but we all think. It is unfortunate sometimes when you ask somebody by way of greeting, and you say good morning, or you find somebody in a certain posture and you ask, what are you thinking? He says nothing. It is impossible that you can be there and you are not thinking about anything. But I think maybe we just take it for granted that sometimes you can be there and you are not thinking. Ndugu Irumba and our dear viewers, you know that this last week we had the death of Pope Francis and the burial, which also happened, was it yesterday but on Saturday? And all the world leaders almost were there. it is unfortunate to lose a person. It doesn't matter that that person is white, black, brown, or whatever the color, whether she is 88 or 90 or 2 or 1 year, it becomes, it's a loss. We have never come to terms with the reality that all of us must die at one time, and whenever it happens in one way or another, it shakes us to the core.
But what are those special attributes that you remember about Pope Francis?
First of all, Pope Francis is one of the many other popes, but him, the recent one who came to Uganda in particular, he was in, I think, Southern Sudan. He actually washed the feet of...
kissed and washed the feet
washed and kissed the feet of Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. And we found that one very... we are not used, especially from the African context. We are not used to Africans being kissed by whites, and I think that's what was kind of making the African friends kind of take the Pope Francis as one of the most humble. And I have heard our Katikiro, Munamateka, Charles Peter Maiga, also talk very fondly of him. To the extent that Sister Teresa, the Caracas, Karakata sister, was doing so many charitable things. Pope Francis equally was in that category of doing extremely charitable things. The other is that I remember he spoke very passionately about peace in the world, and he had actually also hinted that we needed to do something very quickly, as far as soon as yesterday, about the peace in Ukraine. It is unfortunate that he died without seeing peace in Ukraine. I hope that in his memory, those who are responsible for the peace in Ukraine expedite it. And probably I also need to mention that within this week I saw a one-on-one after that altercation between Zelensky and Trump in the Oval Office with Vance, the vice president. This time around, the two chairs were set and they were in Vatican.
And it was one-on-one.
And it was one-on-one. There was even nobody, not even, I didn't even see a reporter. So I get the confidence that at least from that sitting posture and the one-on-one, which was not for 5 minutes, but for a little bit of extended time, that probably from that conversation, some reality could have dawned on those who are stakeholders in the affairs of Ukraine, that Ukraine must get peace. And I can assure you, although the two were talking, but at the end of the day, I know the two leaders who are going to bring peace in Ukraine. It is President Trump and also the president of Russia. These two, not even Europe, by the way, is going to dictate what is going to happen in Ukraine. It doesn't matter whether Britain, Germany, France talk whatever they want to talk, but at the end of the day, the decision between America, United States of America, and Russia about the affairs of Ukraine is what is going to bring peace in
Thank you very much, Comrade Dan Rugarama Karuchiko. Mr. Karuchiko, the relationship between France and Burkina Faso has significantly deteriorated in recent years. In early 2023, Burkina Faso's military government ordered the French troops to leave the country, ending a long-standing military partnership. Furthermore, in September 2023, Burkina Faso expelled the French military attaché for alleged subversive activities. These actions reflect Burkina Faso's shift from France and towards other international partners such as Russia for security and political support. There is no public. In conclusion, you saw what happened recently. We've been to. I was in Burkina Faso. The citizens of Burkina Faso actually sleep on the roundabouts, on the streets. These young people, they sleep on the streets guarding their government. What France and America is calling a junta government, the Burkinabes sleep on the streets guarding it and their president. However, you saw last week, Lissafri was here, he's the one even who told us that the Burkinabes you see in the streets of France demonstrating, calling for an end to Traore's government, are actually people that are sponsored by France itself, educated by France itself, fed by France itself, housed by France itself. Traore has so far, Traore, I think the last 2 weeks, he has survived the 4 coup attempts. 4. And all of them, when you go to find out, it is France in the background. France. And it is France now with the sponsored guns telling the world that no, Traore, you have failed. Traore, you should leave. I want to hear your opinions on that, my brother. France, whose military bases were closed by Traore, now pretends to be loving so much Burkinabes than Traore.
The dilemma that Africa has faced in the past, and I hope that the entry of the Sahel region new breed of leaders into the African political scene is going to change the narrative. The unfortunate episode that has happened to Africa is believing too much in what does not organically belong to us. I want to take you back a little bit in history for you to be able to realize, and for me to be able to paint a picture, for you to realize that actually we have been in bed with our enemies for a very long time. Africa, pre-independence, had suffered a great deal of external forces. External forces in the sense that the white man, first of all, brought religion. Either it was Catholicism or Anglicanism. The so-called missionaries who appeared here on the African scene, in majority of the cases, were doing pacification. They are pacifying Africa for the eventual entry of the explorers and colonialists. Either for them to be able to soften the hearts of the African people, such that when the explorers came and discovered the minerals, the wonderful fauna and flora, then they would report back. It is even noted that some of the people like Livingstone and his colleagues who had their notes, some of the notebooks which have been exhibited in world museums, contain information to the effect that the so-called explorers and what have you were actually sharing information to the colonialists who later on followed the evangelists or the missionaries. Now, in the same vein, we also had the misfortune certainly of the slave trade, and I have talked about slave trade several times. We don't know that the biggest global misfortune that has ever happened on the global scene has been trading in human beings, which we call slave trade, and it happened on the African continent. Of course, some of these other isolated cases, which were also at a very big scale, like the murder which Leopold II committed, in horrific murders that he committed in the present-day Democratic Republic of Congo, notwithstanding. But we are going to now to make noise about all these other things that happened, like the Holocaust and what have you. I said here it is unfortunate that the Holocaust took place, but there are other unfortunate events that took place on the African continent that are not talked about. And yet, if we talked about them, if those stories came out in the manner and proportion in which they actually appeared, it would make some of these other stories like the Holocaust to look like a story of a chicken thief when we are talking about the story and identity of the African people. Having told you all this, I want to tell you that later when the African person started, the consciousness, the political consciousness started increasing, and he said, now I want to gain independence, at least the flag independence that we are talking about. Then we had the liberation movements, the guerrilla wars, various guerrilla movements, if you want to call them guerrilla movements, but I prefer calling them liberation movements. And finally, we started getting a number of countries, because you remember the partition, the Scramble partition had already taken place at Berlin 1884, 1885. And the entire Africa had been partitioned in two different parcels and allotted to the various scavengers in Portugal, Spain, Britain, France, and what have you. So therefore, at the end of the day, your France that you are talking about, where Burkinabe falls in French West Africa, in West African region, took the largest part in the West Africa. There are a lot of West Africa and Central Africa, and some of the Central African countries, like Congo, Brazzaville, like Central African Republic, were all under the French leadership. But Burkina Faso is one other country that is described as having been part of the French West Africa. And therefore, when Africa started getting independence and we progressed into the 1963 Organization of African Unity, having fought protracted liberation wars, a good number of countries, like about 20-something, had at least gained flag independence. The very first one being Sudan, although we talk about Ghana. And finally, we have a situation whereby gradually quite a number of them started gaining independence. But you see countries like the French West Africa, France had been practicing what we call assimilation. The deception that those countries which were under colonialism by the French were actually not under colonialism, because the assumption was France was actually extending the same treatment to the people they were colonizing as the ones who were in France. That's what they deceived, they told the entire world. But we know, of course, that was far from the truth, although so many other people who are gullible fell for it. So therefore, for a very long time, even when France was getting out of French West Africa, like the rest, Britain got out, Spain, Portugal got out of their former colonies. So they say practically they got out, but we know that they actually repressed the getting out. Their physical presence on the African continent, they repressed it with imperialism, and it is still alive and well. In the case of French West Africa, and in the case of Burkina Faso that we are talking about, they had what we call continuation pact. They actually signed, every country there that was under the direct colonial rule of France, signed, with exception of Mali, they signed pact for continuation of colonialism.
Hey,
meaning that,
wait a minute.
Yes,
We have just colonialism from Africa. But before they go, they signed pact for continuation
of colonialism. Now, what that meant for the benefit of our viewers,
Really?
that is how
you are lying.
that's how they took us. It is true. This is what they did, and what that meant. Maybe you will get even more annoyed if you get to know what that meant. What that meant is that whatever was happening pre I mean, whatever was happening when the French were directly colonizing these countries was actually to continue. And this time around, some
but
of the
was
things
under different arrangement.
under different
What
form.
was changing was the system.
The form was the form would change, but the substance was the same.
And
Some of the things, for instance, that looked as if they had changed. Every country that signed Pact for continuation of colonialism had to keep her foreign reserve in the central bank of France. And that money, if the particular country like Burkina Faso, like Guinea-Bissau, like Senegal, if they wanted that kind of, they would have to make an application
for my money,
for their money to come. Now, if the governor, the French governor, or the central bank governor of France, with his committee, so that yes, this application meets certain standards, they would advance to them that money. You can imagine what that means. At the same time, the currency,
if you don't convince them, you
don't get anything. But whenever you correct taxes, whatever you correct, you have got to bank it with the central bank of France. And this has been happening.
And then they say we are independent.
Even in the 21st century. That's why we call it flag independence. And probably I'm giving you all this.
So this is still happening now?
Yes, absolutely it is. All the countries, save for these ones, and this is what is bringing the trouble, which you have actually asked, the relationship between France and Burkina Faso. The trouble we are having right now is because the Sahel, the Confederation of the Sahel Republic, or the countries in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are breaking away from the continuation or the Pact for continuation of colonialism. And that is why, for instance, they are chasing away all the military bases of France.
They did
because part of the pact, part of the was contained in the pact was that all the military bases, not just the military bases, training of the police, prisons, and the army of those countries that signed Pact for continuation of colonialism had to be done by France. All the weaponry for fighting had to be purchased from France. In addition to the money, the currency, having to be backed up and controlled by the central government or the central bank of France. Now you can imagine and you claim that you have got an economy.
In France, in francs.
Majority of what you had to purchase, you have to purchase it from France. So at the end of the day,
the money the West Africa uses is francs.
Yes, it is a French franc. Yes, absolutely. Now that is why the eco currency. You remember that at one time Nigeria wanted to be part of the currency reform in West Africa, and they had established what we call the eco currency. The way the eco currency was going to operate was going to be so different from how the French had designed the currency that has been used in French West Africa for a very long time. So as such, therefore, France under Macron not long ago had to rush into French West Africa, all those countries, the 14 or so, to make sure that that project of reforming the currency is diluted. Now, why I am saying this is that we are looking at a situation now where France has got to be head on with Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso having changed their agency. The day a man like Captain Ibrahim Traore came onto the political scene, they started reforming so much. They reformed the economic relations. They have now gone into the reform of the currency. They reformed the partners, the trading partners, the people to deal with. They have chased away the French military bases. They have redirected their efforts in where they purchase their arms.
Russia.
They have now redirected who trains their army and how the army is trained, where they buy the arms like from Turkey. Those drones you hear, they are from Turkey and Russia. The agents, therefore, that they paid through the Pact for Continuation of Colonialism in its entirety has been debunked by the current leadership. The talk that Captain Ibrahim Traore usually gives, that the leadership of the past, which was in bed with the French, is now over, and the days of colonialism and imperialism are over. We are going to have to run our countries on our own dictates and the interests, and in the best interests of our people. That is what is bringing trouble. That's why you find that France, therefore, is sponsoring these assassination attempts. And it is not news that, for instance, that France is doing it. When in the 1960s, we had majority of the French countries on the African continent gaining independence, the rhetoric, the kind of perception, the approach they had, that crop of leaders, the Amilcar Cabral of that time, the Soko Toures of that time, the Olympiacos of that time, could not survive. The Ben Bearers could not survive the onslaught of the French, because it was a crop that was against what had been signed, Pact for Continuation of Colonialism. And what the French therefore had to do was to move in smartly, destabilize those governments. If the government could be overturned,
they are revolutionaries.
If the government could be overturned, because they still do it, by the way, if the governments could be overturned, internally they would sponsor revolt. When a mutiny succeeds, a buffoon from the army is encouraged to take over government, like they did in Uganda. You remember the British, they brought Amin, not that he was the most qualified, but they wanted somebody, and they told Obote when he was still in Singapore. He said that some of you people here are giving very good speeches, but you are not going to be able to go back.
To land back to your country.
And this is the same thing we are talking about. That the majority of these former colonies.
Here Obote was trying to arrest Amin, whom he had assigned in Congo to go and
he had stolen gold.
And he had stolen gold.
Yes.
So they said, when you land back to Uganda, Obote is going to arrest you. Now,
absolutely,
we are going to help you and overthrow him.
So this is what happens. That we had got, we have a history of our enemies who in the past are known to have destabilized African governments, and those governments that fell out of the destabilization and instauration of buffoons, the political leaders that were empty of any ideological orientation.
If you are not call them buffoons, what would you call them?
They are absolutely, you see, I'm trying to look for a better word to use, but in majority of the cases, those leaders that were, unless of course you give me a better word, but those leaders that immediately came.
What's another word for buffoon?
Those leaders that came when the people that brought the independence to those countries that formed the Organization of African Unity, those that were, for instance, overthrew the Olympiacos, those ones that came after Ben Bera, those that came after Abdul Gamar Nasser, those ones that came after Patrice Lumumba. Honestly, in all fairness, with all due respect, if there is any that I can give them, what would you call a man like Kuku Wazabanga Mobutu Sese Seko, who repressed Patrice Lumumba? What would you call him? You see, so therefore, when we refrain from calling a spade and we call it a big spoon, we sometimes maybe confuse our viewers and we miss the point. The point I'm making, particularly as far as the relations between Burkina Faso and France is concerned, is this: that in the circumstances where we do not have the military bases of France, which military bases were used to control the political military might of Burkina Faso. In circumstances whereby we do not have the military bases of France in the entire Sahel region, does what Mali does. Mali does what Burkina Faso does because of that confederation of the Sahel republics. When we have got a situation whereby the economies of the Sahel region are not tied to the economy of France, when the minerals within those regions are no longer a preserve of the French government, when the situation is that, for instance, the military or the ammunitions do not necessarily have to be a monopoly of the French to supply to the confederation of the Sahel region, when we have got the training of the police, the prisons, the military, not a monopoly of the French, when they have now debunked completely the Pact for Continuation of Colonialism and they are now reorienting their interests elsewhere, when the collaborations are on the terms of the people of Burkinabe, you cannot but expect that France is going to retaliate like they were retaliating before by attempting, in cahoots with their cousins CIA, M16, the Mossad, they are going to be to start destabilizing.
FBI by intention?
FBI is usually the internal intelligence network of America, but CIA is the one that goes across the borders. So they are the ones that, for instance, in cahoots with the Belgians, assassinated Patrice Lumumba. They engineered with M16 the misery overthrow of Osejefo, Kwame Nkrumah. They were at the helm of eliminating Olympiacos. They were everywhere in Abdul Gamara, Nasser's troubles. The entire African continent has suffered under the armpit of the imperialistic West, using their mass media. The people who killed Gaddafi not long ago were actually a combination of the NATO Republic. NATO itself is nothing but a rebel outfit, a global rebel outfit. NATO, yes. NATO, which is the so-called North Atlantic Treaty Organization that comprises United States of America with majority West African, West European countries, is nothing from, judging from the history that they have perpetuated all manner of trouble, globally speaking, is nothing but an organized, well-orchestrated, internationally recognized rebel outfit. And therefore, what therefore is happening in between Burkina Faso and France was expected. If it had not happened, if what we are seeing, the attempted failed assassinations were not taking place, and they are not about to stop, but this time around,
that Traore is also in
bed.
France,
is in bed with the French.
But now
that what is happening is happening, we know for a fact that Traore Ibrahim, captain, is doing the right thing. I want to also tell you this, comrade and our dear viewers, that look, a man like the late Air Commandante, Fidel Castro. He survived well over 100, if not 200, assassination attempts. Remember, he is just 90 kilometers away from Florida, and that is America. But they made sure, you ask, what is the crime of Cuba? What had Air Commandante Fidel Castro done to deserve all the assassination attempts on his life? Simple. He was redirecting his country to self-reliance. And America does not want, United States of America does not want to look at a country, a neighbor moreover, who is challenging them. The only person who speaks the truth, and maybe to the chagrin of the hegemony of America, is Trump, because he would tell Zelensky that you give us the mineral rights of rare earth, and that's how we are going to give you protection. Others were not saying it. I want to believe had Kamala, for instance, won the elections, she would not, because Democrats are in the habit, and maybe it is the personality of President Trump, but he will say it, and the entire world, whatever the higher America climbs these days, the more of its naked private parts that we see. And that is how they are.
You're hitting below the belt.
That is the point I'm telling you, and therefore, that France now, which was also hiding under the pretext that it is a democratic country, that it is helping, advancing, I want to tell you, by the way, you wait. If we continue on the trajectory that the Republic, the Confederation of the Sahel states has set, and the entire Africa catches fire, and we move on the true tenets of Pan-Africanism, the way, for instance, Ben Bella had shaped the Algeria, and we take up and we, for instance, refocus and we reorganize ourselves around how Algeria had wanted that we move. The Pan-African credentials, we reinvent ourselves. We catch the fire of the 1960s, how Africa was. I want to assure you, some of the countries which are masquerading as if they are first world countries are not even going to be third world countries. I can assure you that when France is stopped from stealing from Africa the precious minerals, it is denied the robbery rights that it has been exercising. Let me ask you, you may not necessarily be a lawyer, but at least you are a very sharpened journalist. And you have been carrying out coverage of so many legal matters and unearthing so much. What do you call somebody who takes somebody's thing without the other person giving him that thing to be taken, and the intention of that person taking the other person's thing is to take it permanently without returning it? What do you call such a person?
Thief. Thief.
Thank you very much. France has been taking the French West Africa raw materials without the express consent of the person who owns those raw materials. And the intention was never to return anything that France has been taking from French West Africa. What does that make France?
The thief is a robber.
I rest my case.
Thank you very much, comrade. Let's move to the next topic. On April 25th, 2025, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and Rwanda took a significant step toward peace by signing a declaration of principles in Washington, D.C., not in Africa. Comrade, you hear that? In Washington, D.C. is where Kagame and Tshisekedi met to sign a declaration of principles. In other words, they are trying to sign a peace agreement, but it must be in Washington, D.C., being overseen by America. But when Kagame returns here, he says, I'm a Pan-African. This agreement aims to address the long-standing conflict in eastern DRC, where the Rwandan-backed M23 rebel group has been active. The ceremony was overseen by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and attended by the foreign ministers of both nations. Trump even doesn't want to meet Kagame and Tshisekedi. He gives you his Secretary of State. Go and meet them. Let them agree. Come and report to me. I don't have time to meet them. But they have gone to his country. 2 presidents are in your country. Comrade Rugarama, Karuchiko. 2 African presidents are in America. And you don't have time for a full week to meet any of them or both of them to discuss such an important matter. that has plagued the country, DRC, for many centuries in war, but also in the East African region, but also in Africa. It is not a big issue. But Trump can meet just, there is a problem that happened in Florida, some small problem. I think floods took over some buildings, and in an hour, Trump had flown there, and it had only killed 3 people. It's a big catastrophe. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, they will put their live updates every minute. But the war happening in Congo, how many people are dying? When 2 presidents go to America to solve a problem, he doesn't even have time for you. He gives you a Secretary of State. And then they come back to Uganda, to Africa, they say, we are presidents.
No,
the Secretary of State of America, if he came to Rwanda or DRC, the Rwandan president would not even work until the man leaves the country. Now, this development follows a March 2025 meeting in Doha, Qatar, where President Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Felix Tshisekedi of DRC, mediated by Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, agreed to pursue an unconditional ceasefire. The United States has played a pivotal role here, this one, but they are playing a pivotal role in facilitating these discussions, motivated by both regional stability and strategic interests in the DRC's vast mineral resources, including cobalt and lithium, essential for modern technologies. While the recent agreement is a promising step, its success will depend on the commitment of all parties to uphold the ceasefire and engage in continued dialogue. Comrade Karuchiko, first of all, Paul Kagame has refused to respect the regional leadership under the East African community to sit down and have meaningful conversations to end the war in DRC, and him to stop supporting a rebel group called M23 in DRC. He has refused to respect them. The only person now he wants who can sit them down is when they go to Qatar. Now, even when they went to Qatar, the information we have is revealing that actually America was also in the background, facilitating the meeting. He was very alive, America. Now, after Qatar, now they go to America. But in America, they're meeting the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, not the American President Donald Trump. But American President Donald Trump has met the Ukrainian president how many times in 2 months? How many times in 2 months? They have even recently, you have just said last week.
Together at Vatican.
Yes.
Now let me
one president. But look at how many countries do you have in Ukraine if you are to fit them in Congo? What about the wealth in terms of mineral resources? What about when you look at the entire East African region is at war with itself because Congo is not stable? But the American president will meet the president of Ukraine 100 times to discuss, because Ukraine has a conflict with Russia, and America wants to ensure that he is at the top of the game so that they don't give a leverage to Russia. When it comes to Congo, they will just tell you, we have written a statement, go and do this. And then Kagame speaks so well about self-determination as Africa, about Pan-African. He's a symbol of Pan-Africanism. But see what they do in the underground.
Okay, now, Mr. Speaker, the tragedy of Africa is, among others, loss of self-identity. It is unfortunate that even our Pan-African heroes of the modern times probably also let us down. But suffice to mention that even the President Kagame, whom we may fault for not listening to his peers and fellow presidents in the East African region and also the SADC bloc. It is actually, in my opinion, not entirely true. It is not entirely true because even the leaders here in SADC bloc and EACA, their hands are tied. They are not alone.
Tied by who?
Let me tell you that the instructions now are actually being given in Qatar, and Qatar is but just an agent. Let me tell you that the role of Qatar does not only stop at what they did between Tshisekedi and President Kagame and President Tshisekedi, but Qatar has been at the forefront, by the way, of conducting mediation talks in as far as the Palestinian and the Israeli conflict is concerned. In one way or another, of course, when you dig deep, you realize that Qatar is also not alone. They are acting as an agent of the American interests. Whatever they do, if you do not wear thick lenses, you will think that they are actually doing it in their capacity as an independent state and that they are peace-loving. But in actual sense, when America gets tired of conducting some of these mediation, so-called mediation talks and dictating affairs on their own continent and in their own country, they will bring it nearer. And they create a country like Jordan, they create a country, because the anti-missile system, by the way, that cannot easily hit, for instance, Israel, are stationed in Jordan. There is that memorandum of understanding between the United States of America and Jordan, that all the missiles that are directed to destruct Israel, probably from Iran and what have you, will always be arrested in Jordan. They are stationed there. So, in other words, who is in charge of Jordan's sovereignty? That is another thing. In the same way, when Qatar said, no, for us we are not going to be used in that light, or at least we can be used as the Switzerland. We are a financial free market. Then America is going to use Qatar as a peace hub, that all the negotiations and what have you. So I want you to look at Qatar's role, first of all, as an agent, but also a country that cuts a pause of a mediator, when in actual sense they are doing mediation on behalf of United States of America. And that's what America is good at. In every region, they will have that kind of a person.
You think a meeting in Qatar could be a meeting in America?
Absolutely.
In Qatar.
You go to Asia, you look at South Korea, and what South Korea does is nothing but every foreign policy that South Korea takes is but in the interest of
America.
You look at what even a seemingly quiet country like Pakistan does, and you know that the nuclear armament that was given to Pakistan was by America in order to rival the nuclear capabilities of India. You look at the military might and the economic boom in South Korea, it is to make sure that they rival the interests of China and also the seeming importance that is growing of Democratic Republic of Korea. You come to the Middle East, you look at what is happening in Jordan, you look at Qatar, all those things. So I wanted you to get to know that. So therefore, what was happening, what Rubio was mediating and the signing between President Kagame and President Tshisekedi in Washington was just a wrap-up of what happened in Qatar by the Amir. The Amir was not acting alone, and this was coordinated. It is a follow-up meeting. They are not disjointed. Don't think that now Amir was having something different. And no, that is not how global geostrategic meetings and politics are here. That's not how they work. They work the way you are seeing them work now. That's what it is. There is a temptation to think that President Kagame and President Tshisekedi actually don't respect the They are members. The regional leaders in East Africa, in SADC, they do. But question is, where exactly does power lie? Where exactly does power lie?
Is not in these regional blocks.
No, forget about it. The regional groups, you will remain a loner. Let me tell you. Assuming our president, for instance, the president Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of the Republic of Uganda, who talks about Pan-Africanism, who acts and who does Pan-Africanism, wants to control and redirect from on the tenets of the Pan-African lines the affairs within the DRC, he will remain alone. Why do I say so? You will find that our senior brother in Kenya is going, for instance, to get out of the EYAKA interests, and he will begin dealing directly, and you have seen him do it. Deal directly with the United States of America, forgetting that he is one of the biggest regional bloc members here in the East African region. You will find that a country like South Africa, even with her Pan-African credentials, even having taken Israel to the International Criminal Court of Justice, will still pursue certain interests within the Democratic Republic of Congo as if she is doing it on her own. But when in actual sense, the president of South Africa is, for instance, an agent of the Guptas in South Africa. And the Guptas are whites who are controlling mining rights. And they want to extend the mining rights of South Africa, and those mining rights of South Africa, and the whites are actually Americans. They are from Belgium. They are from Britain. They are all congregating in South Africa, and the South African minerals are getting exhausted, and they want to extend into DRC, and then they will create a body called MONUC and MONUSCO, who are international United Nations fighting agencies to protect peace. They are protecting mining rights. So the moment you do not unwrap that web and start identifying in law, we say that you must pierce the veil or lift the curtain and see who is operating behind. The moment you don't pierce the veil to see actually who is behind the curtain, you are going to be gullible. I have always said.
You're going to be dealing with what you see.
Is actually that's all.
Yet what you see is simply
nothing. It has got nothing to do with the truth. What we see, Comrade Irumba and our speaker, what we usually see on the African continent is a macrocosm. If at all, the little truth that we see on the surface, and this is the danger. This is the danger that we have. We have got a very dangerous precedent that our universities, our colleges are churning out products whose thinking is controlled by the neoliberal-minded professors who do not see beyond the textbooks which are written to persuade and convince the thinking, and these members, the products of these universities, are going to be unleashed onto the institutions that determine the future of our countries. We are having a very big problem. Foreign Affairs Ministry is filled with products of neoliberal universities, and the people who are controlling those universities, the universities in the so-called best universities from the Harvards of this world, the Kent of this world, Oxford, Yale, the London School of Economics, Bank of Uganda is going to be filled with all those. The thinking, the brains there are people who are going to be solving problems in using the lenses of their neoliberal thinking professors, and we are not going to get out of this web of confusion. And at the same time, these are people who you find that are interpreting and shaping the policy of the developing economies, so much so that you will never get any organic policy being developed on the African continent. They are simply doing the bidding of International Monetary Fund, World Bank. By the way, did you know that we also have so-called representatives? The Pope has a representative here.
Pope?
Yes, not even the cardinal. There's many cardinal. We have a cardinal. No, the Pope has a representative here in this.
It's called?
Who stays there in Mbuya, around there. He was the one actually leading mass when after the Pope had died.
Here.
Yes. At least the.
So.
Yes, but maybe that is against the background that Vatican is an independent state. There is that. It may not be in the sense of Italy, the way Italy, you see a country called Italy, but Vatican is an independent state. So I don't want to go into that debate now of these religions. I have told you that we are confusing religion with faith. And this is a very big mistake. We think that Anglicanism is the same thing as when you come up and you say, no, I believe like our senior brother Joshua Maponga Marara the third, when he talks about faith, he talks about us believing in our mediums that we use to communicate to our God. They say you are a traditionalist, you are a kafiri, we Africans, we are the only people who do not have our own religion. The English and the associates have got Anglicanism. The Germans and the associates have got Presbyterian. The Roman Catholics, hear them. The very bored Roman Catholic. You will get an Andrew Irumba here. He says he is a Roman Catholic. You are here a Roman. Of where? When did you become a Roman? That I am a Roman.
You are roasting him. Look at them. Franca Kabut.
That is a Roman Catholic. Where? So therefore, there is no way.
What about Daniel?
The Muslims. Yes, you get a Daniel here who says, you see, I'm with Daniel. Therefore, I'm Anglican. I'm already is going to Anglican. But you say at the end of the day, all that is just a lie. You are not any of that. You find and when you talk about, I will not fear, this is Pan-African freedom.
Yes.
We are not fear to talk about some of these things because you see, when you talk about, when you want a war here,
start a war of religion.
You start a war, talk about religion. Even professors will attack you. People who are seemingly educated will attack you. People who are traders will attack you. Because what the colonial man did was to make sure that he puts you in this religious thing, so that you completely forget about your faith. You start looking at religions, and these religions, by the way, are for purposes of enhancing your strategic linkages, how to manage the strategy, global strategy. But most importantly, I want to conclude here by telling you that Comrade Rumba, the dilemma we have, and this one is of great importance, the dilemma we have is not the people that cannot read, the people that cannot write. Those ones can be told, they can be reshaped, they can be properly guided on what to do. They are not a problem. The most dangerous thing we have in the developing economies on the African continent and other so-called third worlds are people who consider themselves to be educated. They have gone to school, they have got university degrees, some have got masters, some have got PhDs, they can speak this good English, or whatever good English is, I don't know, but not knowing that they have been completely miseducated. The inability for us to debunk what we have learned, to learn what we have been given as knowledge, and take on a new knowledge to liberate ourselves, begin a new thinking which is new. Start looking at the globe in a very different context and different lenses. Start viewing our situation and realizing that we are the only people who are going to get ourselves out of it. There is no way, if we do not do that, that we are going to look at people like President Kagame, people like President Tshisekedi, and you look at them and you say they are very poor leaders. Somebody who was claiming, because President Kagame claimed that Tshisekedi was actually not fit to be the president. But see, all of them, they have been reduced to what? They were invited and put in the same basket and say you agree. Now who is who at the end of the day?
The Secretary of State.
No, that's what they do.
You're not fit to meet the president of USA.
Who are you? Because you see, they call all the African leaders. You are talking about that. They call African leaders, all the African leaders. They go and they don't even meet the president of America for more than 2 minutes. Then they take photos. After taking photos, they come back. But they come back, the people they actually meet most are the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, committee of this in the House, sign mineral deals. I have told you, and I will repeat it again. It does not matter how well-intentioned Africa is. We got so many chakweras of Malawi. Even if we got so many hekirimas of Zambia, who have been tested, and according to the rankings of America, Traore is different. Traore is getting it right from the Pan-African lenses. But I want, because he's looking at those indicators, which, for instance, Chakwera cannot do. What Traore is doing, Chakwera cannot do. What Traore is doing, Gunde, our president, Hekirima in Zambia, will not do. As long as we've got nice presidents, nice quote unquote, the likes of Hekirima, for how long has he been in the presidency of Zambia? He will still get the second term now for another 5 years. I can assure you, he will continue signing off mineral rights of copper mining to the American conglomerates. He will continue signing the production of power to the companies, conglomerates from London and elsewhere, like Uganda, who are giving out our rights to produce power to an English company. At the end of the day, therefore, as long as we do not build the capacity here, the African capacity, that whoever we invite, we are in what we call knowledge sharing, to be able to start doing our own things, our own way. We are not going to move anywhere. This noise we are making in the political arena is just nothing but only intended for self-aggrandizement.
Thank you so much, Comrade Comrade Dan Rugarama Karuchiko. Time is against us. I want us to end with just 1 minute. I want us to analyze the tweets of General Mhoz, the CDF of Uganda. Remember, UPDF is in DRC. These are some of the tweets that Mhoz has said about DRC. One is Kabila, Joseph Kabila, allowed ADF to subsist in Eastern DRC for 17 years. He never allowed us to take action against them as Uganda. His Excellency Tshisekedi is much better than him in that respect. That's tweet number 1. Tweet number 2. My big brother, His Excellency Tshisekedi, is the president of DRC and they will support him as much as possible. Tweet number 3. Mhoz says, when Joseph Kabila landed in DRC, he says, you, Joseph Kabila, I will never allow you to be president of DRC again.
I will agree with our CDF I will agree with our CDF on this. One, that during the time of Kabila, we were having all manner of trouble from DRC. And when Tshisekedi, by the way, it is during the Tshisekedi's reign that we had, we struck a very good chord, and we ended up deploying country to country. We ended up deploying and diffusing ADF. Now ADF is the thing of the past. Really, you can, it is fortunate that you come from that part of the country which was badly hit by ADF, nearby, not exactly directly that area, but at least nearby. The information would reach you before it comes to me or any other part of the country. And I think Tshisekedi also drove the Democratic Republic of Congo to join the East African community. And to me, that was a very big plus. I still thank him because of that. He's certainly a human being. He's not an angel. And he is bound to make mistakes here and there. I'm very sure he commits mistakes here and there, but there are scores he has made, like the joining of the East African community, like allowing the UPDF to access his territory and be able to fight the ADF from inside, like allowing and partnering with UPDF Engineering Brigade to put up a road which is going also to be solving issues of business, connectivity. So if at all those tweets are from our CDF, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, I will agree with him on 2 or 3 things. One, that in Tshisekedi we have got a more willing partner, and even me, I would support Tshisekedi's presidency. In the DRC. I'm not a voter, but it's just support. So I agree with him there. Then also I will support Tshisekedi in as far as he seeks stakeholders' support. Because you remember, he was the very first one to call a standby force of the East African community. Although later on he got dissatisfied, I think his expectations were not rhyming with the expectations of the East African regional members. He wanted to fight the M23, and that's where I disagree with President Tshisekedi. I don't view M23 as an outfit, a rebel outfit that is all out to take him out of power. Instead, I look at his view of the M23 or the Banyamulenge people as not being correct. I instead go with what Mwalimu Julius Nyerere's views about the Banyamulenge, who actually constitute the M23. It is a stock of the Banyarwanda people, but who, because of the 1884-85 Berlin Conference, found themselves in DRC. So to the extent that his views there are not properly aligned and they are not so Pan-African, I disagree with him. But at the same time, I agree with General Muhoozi when, I kind of find his tweet that he's not going to allow the Kabila not to ever come as the president of DRC, rather disturbing. Why is it disturbing? I don't think that our CDF, the CDF of Uganda, has got capacity, is not a voter, first of all, and the presidents of DRC are voted by the people there who are registered to vote. So I think probably that is not in order. And in that respect, I disagree with him, because probably maybe it is to just let us laugh, because Uganda sometimes is tense.
Comrade Rugarama Karuchiko, you cannot laugh in serious matters. Really.
No, what I'm saying.
These are serious national matters of DRC and Uganda.
How will our CDF stop the president if Kabila from offering himself, for instance? How will he? Is he a chairman of the Electoral Commission of DRC?
That means his presence as UPDF commander in DRC.
No, our presence there is by agreement. And CDF is not the president of Uganda.
Yeah, then it means that he's going to play another role, which is underground, undercover.
Probably
to ensure that he undermines.
That one is the thinking now. That one is the thinking that can come to people's mind. It's possible. The way you are thinking that, and for me, on the other hand, I'm thinking it was just breaking the ice. Uganda is tensed up, tensed up in the sense that we work so hard. Sometimes we don't have enough to do, so we get kind of.
So this is a joke.
It's a joke, because he doesn't have capacity. He's not the chairman of the Electoral Commission of DRC. He's not the president of DRC. And he's there. If the president of Tshisekedi, for instance, woke up and said, I'm terminating this relationship whereby UPDF is supposed to be deployed in DRC, we would pack our bags. The other time when they sent us away, alongside the East African Standby Force members, we went away. So really, I wouldn't want to take that seriously.
Well, thank you so much, Comrade Daniel Garama. Daniel Garama Karuchiko is a lawyer, civil rights lawyer by profession, but he's also the chairman of the Pan-African movement, the Uganda chapter. He's my elder here. He's a permanent panelist at the Pan-African Weekly Roundup. My name is Andy Rumba Katsabe, your speaker. Until we meet again next Monday. Thank you so much, comrade.
Agonize.
Organize. Don't agonize.
Organize.
One Africa.
One people.
One people.
One Africa.
Thank you so much.